Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Love Isn't Enough. I am Joree Rose, here with my partner in life and love,
Dr. John Schinnerer.
and we are so thrilled to be doing this joint podcast together because we realized in both our personal and professional lives, love isn't
enough.
It is that we both wanted to say it at the same time.
But yeah, love isn't enough. We've realized that in our own work that it was important to do the relational work, but where we were getting stuck more so was in our own individual work. And it was things that went back that preceded our relationship. So it was things that came up originally from childhood or from a past relationship. So oftentimes when we were getting triggered in a disagreement, it really had very little to do with her and I and had more to do with our past.
So we're here to share so many stories, so many tools, so many resources on how you can be better in relationship. And in this journey throughout this podcast, John and I are going to be super vulnerable, sometimes maybe even embarrassingly so. And yet we have found the more vulnerable we are, the better connection we have with those who we're teaching.
And we like to think of it as using our experience to teach you.
And it helps people feel seen and not as alone, not as misunderstood, because relationships are fucking hard.
Yeah. And I think it normalizes what other people are going through.
Yeah.
So hopefully you hear some of yourself in our stories and our struggles.
That's our hope. So in this first episode, we want to share with you our journey of how we got to where we are. And we're going to kind of start from present moment going backwards. So John, you want to paint the scene?
Let's start with the end goal, and then we'll go backwards and reveal how we got there.
Okay, so perfect.
2 years ago, we never would have dreamt that Elvis would be serenading us with Can't Help Falling in Love with You at a chapel in Las Vegas in 108-degree heat with our 3 daughters. And our 3 daughters were absolutely thrilled and beaming at us with love and pride.
Yeah, I never saw myself walking down a little fake aisle at the Little Vegas wedding chapel. That was never
with an Elvis impersonator.
That was never within the realm of my expectation, especially in this relationship.
Yeah, and a great story. And it's a mock wedding. It was a
your wedding. It wasn't mock.
Well, it was non-legally binding. So I don't know what to call Joree now. She's somewhere between fiance and wife.
I'm your fake wife.
Yeah.
Half-wife?
Yeah.
That's sure. Half-wife. Well, we've earned the title of husband and wife, though we have not yet legally confirmed that. So I imagine you're wondering, how did we get to that Little Vegas chapel in a non-legally binding wedding ceremony? Funny story, in fact.
Well, and part of the joy in that was the positive emotions that our daughters felt at our union, at our relationship, and the trust that they have in us, and the family unit that we've created with the 5 of us.
Yeah. So I'll give a little context and then we'll go back to the beginning. How's that? Because we've learned so much in this journey of our relationship of almost 9 years, but really in our entire life has been a masterclass in relationships. Yeah. And we both have a passion for understanding relationship, emotion,
human nature.
Yeah. And growth, really, at the root of it, how to grow and become the most aligned version of ourselves. So, okay. So prior to 2 years ago, we were in the midst of about 6 months of a breakup. Off and on, we had been together for 7 years prior to that point, most of which was really great. And well, you guys are going to hear a lot about our relationship and story, but for the first 7 years, I would say it was probably 80 to 85% really good.
It was fantastic.
Which was still an amazing percentage of the time. And that 15% really wasn't about each other. Some of it was, but really, as John had said in the beginning, these accumulation of these small paper cuts, but also open wounds from previous points in our lives were getting activated. So 6 months of off and on, very painful, led to a breakup. fucking devastating breakup. John broke up with me. I was.
But who's counting?
Oh, I am for sure. Absolutely. I mean, hardest thing I'd ever been through, harder than my divorce. It was the most painful, confronting experience that we both actually needed. Because I think ultimately it woke us up.
Yeah. And that's what I was looking for. I was hoping for was a radical wake-up call.
And it was a risk. I mean, you took a huge risk.
Wait, I needed a way to get us deeper.
Yeah.
Than where we were at.
And ultimately we got there. And how we got there, that's a story for another episode. But what was powerful was the depth of our healing when we got back together and the conscious choices we made to, as one of the things I always say to my clients, not try harder, but try different. Mm-hmm. We knew it had to be a different route of healing, and we delved in.
Well, and the places where we got stuck were places, at least let me speak for me. The places I was getting stuck in our relationship was places I had always gotten stuck throughout my history. And it was frustrating as hell because I thought I'm a psychologist. Like I should be able to get past this stuff.
Oh my God. You would think that too?
Yeah.
I used to say that out loud to him. You teach this shit.
Oh,
you should be able to do that.
Which you're the anger management expert. You're not supposed to get angry.
Which I knew was really triggering to hear. So I'm sorry about
That's
that
okay.
Again. But when you do this professionally, it's hard when we can't do it for ourselves.
Well, and it's hard. Like it's hard for us to be human in that level. Like it's not hard. It's frustrating. It's vexing at some point because, and we joke about that, you know, fucking humanity. Cause like, that's the part of me that frustrates me the most is when my emotions are in a spot where I'm not really doing a great job managing them. And they're more in control of me than I am of them.
So during the 6 months of on and off before our breakup, I had requested we go to therapy. And
oh shit, you're gonna tell this story?
Tell the story. And
we'll just tell the lampshade part.
Okay, I'll get to all of it, baby, not just the part where I am, embarrassed. So I had requested that we go to therapy because we were getting stuck and it felt like this gridlock within our relationship. Yeah. And John put out some very specific criteria for a therapist, and I found the guy. And one of the challenges is we had to drive an hour to get there. This is a benefit of us having virtual clients. Our clients don't have to go back home in the same car after a hard therapy session.
Which always sucks.
Oh, it's painful, especially when it was an hour away. Anyhow, so we're in the lobby of our first therapy appointment, and I'm someone who likes things particularly organized.
I'm curious how you're going to describe that.
Was that accurate?
Yeah.
I like things organized. I like things in order. I feel better in my environment when, picture frames are straight on the wall. I might have been known to in other people's houses if the pictures are crooked, I might just straighten them out on the walk to the bathroom. Like who doesn't want that?
Which is funny because early in our relationship, I used to purposely go around the house and like screw up the picture frames, like make them a little bit off. He would also
take my pillows. I have like 7,000 pillows on my bed, and he would purposefully turn them like 45 degrees just to fuck with me.
I thought it was helping.
I think it was actually hurting your case, not mine. So we're in the lobby of the therapist's office, sitting on a couch, very uncomfortable. The tension was already pretty high. And I see across the room from me a lampshade in which the seam of the shade was facing the front of the room.
And we can't have that, can we?
Well, most women can't. As I told this story to many women, they're like, I would have done the exact same thing. I don't think a man would have thought about this. So I did what I now know most women would have done in my position. I got up and I turned the lampshade so the seam was in the back. Very obvious to me what needed to be done. Like I was helping out the other people who are going to be sitting there.
So they wouldn't have the same discomfort.
Exactly. I'm trying to ease the discomfort of those around me, including myself. So as soon as I sit back down from doing that, I'm like, oh shit, John's going to use this against me in our therapy session.
And part of the problem was at that time, I think I was in a slightly depressed mood. And so I was seeing everything through a negative lens, and that became problematic.
Yeah.
And I was having a hard time snapping out of it.
And that was a big piece of it, was you couldn't see the good.
Yeah.
And that negative lens shaded all the good that was there.
Yeah. As evidenced by how I started off the therapy session, which is really embarrassing.
So the
after the fact.
So the therapist says, what brought you guys together in the first place? What made you fall in love with one another?
And I started out with all the negatives, which was
awful.
not his question at all.
Including how I just fixed the lampshade. And, you know, there might have been some labels like OCD in there, perfectionist, which I'm not. I'm just particular on the things that I like. However, that was a pretty low point for us.
Yeah.
And that 2-hour therapy session proved to be really painful and seemingly ineffective to get you to see why you loved me or even liked me. Needless to say, that car ride home was painful and followed up the next day with the first breakup over the phone, which was devastating because we were engaged at that point. And let me paint the picture too. I mean, this was 2022. So this was coming out of COVID. During COVID, you had experienced major back pain and surgery. We experienced obviously COVID, but both as therapists, our client load almost doubled. So the anxiety we were dealing
Depression
with
we were getting
every single day, it was hard to find an escape from.
It was like a fire hose of negative emotion.
It was a lot. So not that I understand completely why he broke up with me. I get it.
Well, I think part of it was we both needed to make changes. And I think we were having a hard time at times seeing the changes that we needed to make, right. Or if we were aware of the changes, actually figuring out how to make those changes and make them stick.
Right. And we both were in a pattern of, I think, being defensive when one of us would make a request for something. I'll speak for myself. I think I was self-righteous in, well, my way is clearly the better way. I mean, the lampshade is going to at least be straight. So clearly that was a good way to handle things. So that was our entree into this time period of challenge. Well, off and on, not seeming to make any movement. Finally led to I really thought was the final breakup in January of 2023, which luckily didn't last very long. I mean, I think within 3 weeks, you would kind of woken up and realized, shit, I made a really big mistake. And it took me probably another 3 or 4 weeks to trust that I wasn't going to be hurt again. But I knew if we were going to get back together, we had to do something different than what we had been doing, because I knew that our love wasn't enough to carry us through.
Yeah, because our love had never been in question.
Never in question.
We've always loved each other deeply. And we just got to a point where we were on each other and kind of...
Not in the fun way.
No. But, you know, that bucket of negative emotions had just grown, filled up.
Yeah.
With nothing major. It was all kind of minor stuff, just an accumulation of minor stuff.
Right. Which, again, as we began to realize, was mostly about our open wounds from the past, from our childhood, from our previous marriages. And John took the initiative to find a couples therapist that had come highly recommended. And
yeah, let me just give a shout out to those people. So a friend of mine, Dr. Jim Bramson, who's a psychologist, said, look, if you're serious about this, go see Charlie and Linda Bloom in Santa Cruz. And he named a bunch of people that had gone and seen them. He's like, they're married. They've been doing this for 40, 50 years. They've written 7 books. Like, they're awesome. I trust them completely. Go see them. And I was like, great. And so I told you that I had made an appointment with them for a 2-day, 12-hour intensive therapy session. That's 6 hours a day.
So for me to hear that, his willingness to go through 12 hours over the course of 2 days gave me the confidence to say he's in. If he's willing to sit in that and face himself and face the fire, so to speak, that was almost enough for me to say he's showing me his commitment, that we knew this breakup was not something we ever wanted to feel again. So we were both highly, highly motivated to do the work and make the change.
And so I remember, you know, sitting with Charlie and Linda, who were awesome. I think I said that already, but how much of what we worked on, how much of what you worked on with them do you think was stuff from your past versus stuff from our current relationship? just out of curiosity?
I would say 80% probably was my past. Would you agree?
Yeah. It was the vast majority.
And I feel like my past was the bigger focus over the 2 days in your past.
That was great.
No, I'm like, I think I'm back for another at least 6 hours. This felt oddly disproportionate for the focus of the attention.
And I wasn't saying the percentage of the focus on you versus me.
No,
I
know.
Okay,
I'm just
to
saying
be clear,
there was more focus.
I know it was awesome. It was great.
That's why you were able to sit there for so long, because it was like, let's just sit back and watch the Joree show of Joree, tell me more. Joree healing her childhood traumas and early relational traumas. But yeah, that was huge, and it worked.
Yeah, it was really effective. It was very helpful. It wasn't easy. It was painful at times. It was confronting. And it led to other conversations outside of that environment. And it was really, really helpful. And part of what I think we've done well through that and through other things is that pattern that you started, which was going back and revisiting disagreements with greater distance, greater calm, greater curiosity, less judgment, so that we can really look at, well, gee, why did you, or why did I get triggered at this sentence or this question? Like, what was going on internally for you there? Was that really about us? Was that about your past? Like, and some of the responses I know I've had in the past were like kind of baffled me. Like the emotional responses. I was like,
can you give an example?
Yeah, like why did I get so angry when Joree took Cammie to Ecuador for a week?
Cammie's my daughter.
And was off the grid in the Amazon, which I mean, number one, made me feel very vulnerable. Like it was scary to me to allow you guys to go to, allow
to feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I just struggled with safety there.
Right.
And it was really hard for me. But then it was beyond that, because I was like, well, why was I angry? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so ultimately, after several conversations, I went back to my childhood and realized that my parents would leave when I was really young, like 4, 5, 6, and they would leave me and my older sister at home for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks with a babysitter who was like 21, who we knew, but there was a couple incidents where just traumatic things happened during those time periods, which made me really dysregulated when someone that I love goes away by themselves.
And he wasn't consciously aware of that, so he couldn't name that to me.
Right.
But what I experienced was stonewalling and shut down and disengaging. So we'll go through all these stories eventually throughout more episodes, but to really come back to this journey of healing. And we've done couples work for our clients over the past couple of years, but nothing super formally. But really recognizing that we're a great team. We work really well together. We are very aligned in our therapeutic approach, even though we kind of take different doors to get into the same room. But after getting back together from our breakup and going to see Charlie and Linda, we really formalized how we want to work with couples, which is, I think, a really, really unique model.
It's fantastic. I'm thrilled with it. And basically it's the idea that, because what we were seeing is we could teach the best relational tools from the Gottmans or Sue Johnson or whoever.
Joree Rose, Esther Perel.
Right. And these were great tools, scientifically validated. And yet a lot of the couples we were working with weren't able to access the tools when they needed them most, or just weren't able to access the tools. And we started looking at, well, why is that? And that happened to us a little bit.
Yeah.
And so we realized that it's critical to do the individual work simultaneous with the relational work if you really want to make headway to move towards living as a happy, thriving couple. Because I would say 60 to 80% of the time, the stuff we're getting really triggered about in relationship is not about us, it's about the past,
right?
Pre-us.
Right.
And I think that's true of all couples out there, and they do it without any realization that it's happening.
Or even if it's stuff from the past, I see in a lot of my clients the wounds they still carry from like when they were dating, or the wedding, or the first child being born, and now it's 20 years later. So even if it's the past, it might still be the past of that
Could be the
person.
Distant past, yeah.
But
a grudge. They're holding a grudge.
Or the resentment builds over time. So in this model, John and I are really making effective work with our clients, really based on our own experience, where we had to do our own individual work simultaneous to the couple's work.
And, you know, in that so Joree and I have been doing this year-long monthly masterclass series on relationships. And the first lesson that we started out with is self-awareness. And you guys have heard me say this before, but
this is our first episode. They haven't heard you say it.
Well, I'm assuming there's some carryover. And you've probably heard me say this before.
His other podcast, The Evolved Caveman, you can hear him talk a lot about the power of self-awareness. There's a plug for John's individual podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
And so Tasha Eurich has research that shows that 95% of people will report being highly self-aware. And in fact, research shows it's about 12 to 15%, which is a huge problem. If the majority of us, the vast majority, are going around thinking, I know everything about myself, I know everything I need to know, and we don't, that's a big problem. And that happens a lot in relationship. And even if it's, I know 95% of myself and I'm unaware of 5%, we're trying to reduce those little areas where we get stuck. And those little areas that we get stuck are usually in that 5%. And so it's critically important to begin, I would argue, with self-awareness. So you know how you feel and can differentiate how you feel. So you know what your thoughts are. So you know what your values are. So you know what some ground rules of conflict are. So you know how to communicate well. Like those are all kind of, to me, part of self-awareness.
Well, and that's really tricky because I would have said I'm highly self-aware, but I think I was more. I was mostly self-aware.
I was too. I wasn't completely.
You were aware about the things you were aware about.
Yeah. And that's. Yeah.
I was aware about the things I was aware about, but I think in general, you and I are more aware than most, having been meditators and practitioners
for 30 years
of mindfulness and the learnings we've done in our own educational journey. And yet sometimes we're most blind to our darkest spot. Yeah.
Well, or we get in, I mean, like where I would get stuck in shame when we would get in those disagreements, like that was a pattern I've had pretty much my whole life that goes back to childhood. And I had never had any success with changing it, although I was aware of it.
Yeah.
But even, I mean, I was aware of the dynamic. I wasn't aware that shame was at the heart of it until probably 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. That was part of our breakup. That was even more recent. And had to delve into
and that was a big awareness.
And so, you know, since getting back together, it wasn't just all joyous and happy of, okay, hey, we're back together. We had then multiple wounds to have to heal and recover from. I mean, one big wound was, especially my 2 daughters were incredibly hurt
and angry
and mad at you.
Yeah.
They, you know, didn't know that they could trust you again and didn't value me in going back to you at that point.
When they saw all your pain during the breakup.
Oh, it was, I couldn't hide it. I mean, and my girls and I are close to begin with, but I couldn't hide it. And they were very, very protective. And
that makes sense too, that they're protective and angry about the amount of hurt that you endured as a result of the breakup. Like I understood that. I got that.
And he understood that so much that when we did get back together and we're committed of, you know, you don't have to support us right now, but hopefully when you see us happy, you will support, will come around.
I also gave them permission to be angry with me.
Which was huge.
And to let me to like unload on me.
Which they did. Which was, I think, the biggest gift you could have given them. And
I just tried to listen non-judgmentally, non-defensively.
Yeah. Did you judge what they said? Probably.
Yeah, maybe some of it. But I mean, it was just, you know, I can see why you're upset about that. I see why you're angry. I see why you're hurt. Thank you for sharing it with me. And we'll probably do a whole other episode on the benefit of accessing healthy anger and how to respond really appropriately. And non-defensive listening. Non-defensively. Yeah, we'll get to all these things. But that was a really big piece because we had previously to the breakup really prided ourselves on how we blended our 3 daughters. And so when we first started dating, our youngest were 10 and my oldest was 12. And we were very, very, very conscious from day one that our top value was our children. And we were both the primary parent for our girls. And we knew if we put our relationship first when we were all together,
that the girls would end up resenting us.
We'd lose them. Yeah.
And so it looked like when we were all together, our goal was to make it additive. If we all five were together, they were the focus of our attention. We would make sure we were doing things where all of us were included. And that was successful. I mean, that in and of itself for blending families is not something we see a lot of other people doing.
Well, one of the things I don't see in blending families very often is putting the kids first. If you're talking about two people from divorces that have kids. And I think all too often I see parents putting themselves first and the kids second, which almost always creates issues.
Yeah. Yeah. At least
it's hard to keep the kids first. I mean, we sacrificed a lot of our own needs along the way for 9 years, and it got less and less so.
Right.
Like we got more and more of our needs filled, and now we're finally gratefully at the point where we've just moved in together after 9 years and having a ball.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And it's a blast because we've done all the work. There's no sore spots, there's no wounds that are still open and raw.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this too, so I'm pretty safe saying this, that, you know, there will be things that come up. There will be irritations and mistakes and miscommunications. And I'm really confident that we have the communication tools and the non-defensive listening and the emotional management skills to make them at least manageable, if not that big of a deal.
Right. I know for me, I used to a little bit walk on eggshells because I never wanted to upset you. And I didn't want to trigger you. And I don't have that fear anymore. I don't have the fear of you being triggered because I also have the confidence that I can handle that. I also have the confidence that you won't get as triggered as you would have because you understand what your wounds were when you used to get triggered.
Well, and I think the other thing you understand is if I get angry, that doesn't mean I'm leaving you.
Oh, that was huge for me to learn.
Like I can get angry and still want to be in this relationship.
Well, and the way that I really learned that was when you gave me really good permission to get angry at you. And anger was never something I was comfortable with or ever felt safe expressing. And John had given me some good reason, but also good opportunity to express it. Once he really mastered the non-defensive listening part, that took time. But like he said with my girls, that, if I got really angry, he would say, thank you for sharing your anger with me. And that permission gave me the confidence to say, wow, I just got like really pissed. And of course, I still want to be in a relationship with him.
Doesn't change anything.
Doesn't mean I'm going anywhere or that I want him to go anywhere. So that made me realize if I could get really angry and not want to end this relationship, then that must mean John could get really angry with me and isn't going to leave me.
And I think there's something really freeing to being able to express your anger at your loved one, which is inevitable, right?
Yeah.
Like we're going to get angry and hurt and pissed off at each other. And to have the freedom to express that so you can kind of finally get rid of it and let it go and feel heard.
Yeah.
I can't overstate the importance.
It creates safety. It allows us to get really vulnerable when we're not afraid to express ourselves. And I think that's a hallmark that is a skill to really learn how to master. And I don't want to say master, meaning it's always going to be 100%, but feel comfortable with practicing and working on. And so John giving my daughters permission for their anger over time, me having more permission. What would you say if one of the things that helped me and my girls heal, what was one of the things that I allowed for you to heal? What did I do?
I think it was the full acceptance of my emotions was a big one for me. And it's interesting. We've also talked about this offline, that I think it took me a while to trust that. It took me years to trust that because I'd never experienced that. And so I don't think I believed it at first. I think I wanted to believe it and found it hard to believe. And so I think that acceptance, and I think that's one of the amazing things about where we're at now is I think there's a complete acceptance of one another. Yeah. The emotions that we feel, the weird or strange thoughts that we have at times, like our own quirks and idiosyncrasies and
our
idiocies. So where was I going with that?
What did I do for you that helped you? One of the biggest things. But I tried to tell you from pretty early on, day one, that I accepted all of you.
Oh, so where I was going to go. So yeah. And so the acceptance piece has been big because I think it allowed me at some of those deeper levels where I really struggled to accept myself, and then go in deeper internally and look at, oh my gosh, this is actually shame that's driving this. Like if you had asked me 5 years ago, do you have any shame in you? I would have said, no, I don't have any shame.
Yeah.
And, you know, where shame is the belief that we are unworthy of love, connection, and belonging. And that's what was kind of fueling that shutdown when we would get in disagreement, where I was just like, ah, shit, I'm no good at this relationship thing, and she'd be better off without me. And those are not helpful or constructive thoughts on any level, nor are they true.
But that's interesting though, because I feel like I always did that for you, try to hold that space of accepting all your emotions.
Oh, you've been amazing.
But was there something different after our breakup and getting back together? Because I would say that was your work on accepting your own emotions to believe that I could then accept yours.
I think most of the work I had to do was my work, because I think the breakup gave me motivation to go back in and look at, like, the shame one is one of the biggest ones, because that led to the stonewalling, it led to the shutdown. And it's one that I've had going back for decades.
And that's where we would get stuck in that anxious avoidant trap. That was hard. Yeah.
And so I think that was the biggest one for me, but it gave me renewed motivation. Like, that's why I studied like internal family systems and did that work myself.
Right.
Was to heal that part of me that was so wounded.
Yeah. I think for you, I really got out of my own way and I finally heard where I was hurting you. I think that was what was different afterwards.
Yeah.
I think I stopped being defensive in justifying myself. And I think that was one of our really big loopholes we got stuck in, is if you were hurt, I would justify my actions versus understand why or how my actions hurt you. Would you agree?
Yes. And the other thing I would say you did was became more flexible in your thinking, and thus more open to my influence.
So this is one you've said in a while, and we just recently were having a conversation in which I had a pretty big awareness around that. So John loves the phrase cognitive flexibility. So, having the ability to be open-minded, open
shift
to
your
others,
thoughts, to consider other perspectives,
not be so rigid in your thinking,
to not believe you're right.
And I think in my own reflection upon myself, I think I've always been pretty open-minded. However, yes. What I recently, and this is like what, 2 years later, really, is what I really recognized is it wasn't so much that I didn't trust you or what you were trying to influence of having me think in a different way or look at things through a different lens. What I realized, what for me felt like I was trying to be controlling of a situation or my environment or the lampshade, what that really wasn't control, because I never resonated with being a controlling person. Like, that just didn't, it felt judgmental, and it just didn't feel like I could see it, because I'm very structured in many ways, but I wouldn't say I was controlling, even though I could see other people's experience of that. But my recent awareness was, it wasn't that I was trying to control things. It was that I had a challenge of trusting. I had a challenge of trusting someone else could be my partner in full definition of partnership, where I could lean in and surrender to and feel safe
and trust it. Yeah.
And feel safe that the chores were going to get done, or, that things would get taken care of. So I was able to become more cognitively flexible while you simultaneously stepped up in our partnership, which I had to create room for you to do. So it was like this if and then. All these things had to happen of both of us letting go of our own attachment to, this is how I do things.
Yeah. And I think early on in the relationship, you were over functioning.
Well, I think I've been over functioning the majority of my whole life.
And so, I mean,
survival mechanism.
What does that look like? It looks like, making the dinner, which was often, typically, usually amazing, and then cleaning up after. And then I was trying to find ways in, like, well, that doesn't feel just to me. Let me do the cleanup if you're doing the cooking. And that took some work. Like like I felt like I had to shoehorn my way into the cleanup.
I didn't feel worthy of you helping me. I felt like this is my house. I made this food. These are my dishes. This is just what I have to do.
And to me, it just felt fair to clean up.
And I appreciate that. And then I was also a little, particular on how I wanted things clean, which might have undermined your health, which I've gotten much better at.
That's part of
right.
Part of shoehorning myself in. Like how far do I need to go? Like, what are your expectations for what's clean versus mine?
Right. And so it was really interesting though, but I think that was been the power of all the self-reflection is to what's another lens I can look at this through? Am I controlling or am I afraid to trust a partner to help me?
Yeah. No, I think that's a much better frame.
Or am I feeling a lack of worthiness that I am deserving of help? I think that was part of it too.
And so I think also your resistance to help way preceded our relationship.
Oh, 1,000%. I've been over functioning my whole life. I mean, I literally, I think back to being 6 years old, over functioning.
One, I think that was the same thing I did in high school, right? I was hyper functioning or over functioning to be successful, to get the attention and love of my parents, to prove my worth.
Well, and for me, it was rooted in trauma of my family of origin in a variety of different capacities, which I'm sure will come out as we talk about in our episodes as well. But that was really, really big. And so it was a simultaneous, I don't know how to trust. Well, and then after our breakup, I'm like, well, fuck, he just broke that trust.
I shouldn't trust.
So ironically, it took that huge breach of trust to be able to rebuild it.
Well, or change the fundamental structure of it.
Right.
Because I think both of us trust each other now 100% plus.
110%.
And that's,
I trust you implicitly.
Like, I trust you too. And I don't think we were quite there before the breakup.
Well, and
as you said, 85 to 90% we were there.
Yeah. Well, and for you listening, it's an interesting thing because as I hear the word trust, the first thing that comes to my mind in a relationship is fidelity. And yet what we're talking is nothing so much more than, do I trust you to be faithful?
And we had early on, we'd given each other passwords to our phones. So we were trusting, we just weren't 100%. And I think the trusting part, like I remember thinking early on, like, wow, I love her so much. And I've told her so much about me. She has the ability to either hold my heart gently or to destroy it. Like that's, if you're really in love, I think that's how it should be. And yet it's simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying to me.
Right.
Because that's complete trust is, here's my heart, please treat it gently. And there's no guarantee that's going to happen. And even with the best of intentions, you're still going to step on it occasionally. We're going to step on each other's. That's just miscommunication or misunderstanding.
It's really amazing to me we were able to rebuild to the level that we are in a relatively short amount of time. And we could go on and on and on, and we will in other episodes. There were a variety of tools we utilized, and that's all to say it works.
Yeah.
And, when people always ask us and have asked us independently in our client base, but as well as the couples work we do, how do I know if I should stay with someone? How do I know this is the right person? Especially when, and this is, I have an experience with a lot of clients, when they haven't had the experience of trusting themselves to know what love looks like or feels like. So they don't know how to trust. Is this a good relationship?
But again, that goes back to self-awareness, I would argue. That you've got to have that emotional awareness. And even when you have it, it can be a little bit tricky.
Oh, 100%. And it's going to be also relationship dependent, right? I mean, we know that attachment styles aren't fixed from birth, that they're going to be relationship and situation dependent. So there's so many external factors. It's really a miracle to me. Anybody works in relationships, to be honest.
Two of the big factors are the level of motivation that you have to stay in the relationship, the level that your partner has as well, level of motivation, but then also, are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to go deep? Are you willing to be uncomfortable? Do you have a growth mindset around relationship skills? Because I think if you do, there's a lot you can overcome.
Well, and that growth mindset is the number one answer we generally give people, but specifically in relationship skills, because I know, like, you were a growth mindset from day one.
Yeah.
Well, but you were blinded to the relationship skill part on some areas.
In some areas. And I think I guess I would add now that you need a growth mindset in terms of personal development and relational development.
Correct.
Because I think where I needed to do the work, that last bit of work was personal.
Yeah.
It was just my shit.
And the ironic thing is, I could have told you that, but you wouldn't have been able to hear me. Mm-mm. You needed to take control of the breakup, to take control of your own process, because it wouldn't, because trust for you and trust with women was a challenge. Yeah. It would have been received as criticism or judgment or put down or shame.
Well, and it's ironic because, I was frustrated with you before we broke up about not listening to me. And yet I couldn't listen to you either because I was in a depressed mood.
I'm smiling as you say that because I couldn't point that out to you.
I know.
So thank you for your full self-awareness on that. And yet, hopefully, as you're listening to this, there's maybe little bits of things that are resonating with you to understand how these small or big nuances create chasm.
And I think as we're talking, also realize that I don't think these are gender bound issues. Mm-mm. Like my issues could be the wives or the females in some relationships. Joree's might be the males or the husbands, assuming heterosexuality.
Right.
Or, you can also look at it as the masculine and the feminine in the relationship, if it's a gay relationship, who has more masculinity, who has more femininity. And it's not attached to that.
No.
They're just human issues.
No. Yes.
Yeah.
Not attached to it.
No.
Yes. I was getting stuck on a different train of thought that I wanted to go to, but for the sake of time, I want to start getting back to how we walked down that aisle with Elvis.
That was amazing.
So we get back together. Our girls begin to rebuild trust. John's daughter always trusted me.
Yeah, she loves you.
Everyone loves each other.
Mm-hmm.
Again, love wasn't what was in question. She just had the maturity to recognize you were going through something, and that had nothing to do with my relationship with her.
Yeah.
And that was an immense amount of maturity on her part. And we began to rebuild, not just together, the two of us, but as a family of 5. And we were committed to this family of 5 also growing. Mm-hmm. So I think having the transparency of what we were going through and we always been open with our girls, but being really open in this is what relationship looks like.
Yeah, this is what is enough for love.
Yeah. And share what your daughter has shared about what we've role modeled. And
oh yeah, we've gotten some amazing compliments from the girls, but one of the things my daughter said, and she comes from a family with a very contentious divorce. And she said, you and Joree have shown me that love is possible. Mm-hmm. You've given me hope that love is possible.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's a really nice compliment.
And at 18, she's also had some amazing people in her life as, young partners that she's had to even show her worth in that. Mm-hmm. So it's been an incredible role modeling experience. Yeah. And
now she goes out with men who treat her very well, who open the door for her, who pay for things, who treat her like the young goddess that she is.
Yeah. She knows her worth. We've taught them
and
their
I
worth.
Love that.
Absolutely.
And I think all 3 of the girls do that.
They do.
Which I'm really grateful for. And we've worked on.
Well, we've actively worked on and have highlighted the importance of what different values in relationship look like. So at 18 and 20 years old, these 3 young women know what to look for and what to avoid.
And they know what they're worth.
So we've been rebuilding. We've been waiting until the girls all left the house for college for us to move in together. But over the summer, we were celebrating John's birthday on a little birthday getaway, him and I. And after having a bottle of champagne while sitting by the water and listening to the Beatles, I had this great idea that the next time we're in Vegas, that we should go see the Beatles Cirque du Soleil show Love.
Yeah, and we had tickets to go see Billy Joel and Sting in November. So we thought, we'll just wrap those 2 together.
So getting excited at this thought, because I love this Cirque du Soleil Beatles show, I go look online only to discover that the show was ending in a week and a half, permanently.
Mm-hmm.
And it might have been the champagne, but I got this bag up my ass.
A bag?
A big bug.
A bug. Okay. That's different.
A big bug up my ass that... Thank
Katy
God.
Perry.
Yeah, I know.
Firework.
We're just having inside jokes now. Oh, that kind of sounds a little scary, but firework was up my ass, but we know what we're talking about. It was a bad, yeah. That was a squirrel on John's part where he just completely derailed. Now you come back, roll you back in. Okay. So I get this big bug up my ass that we need to see love before it ends in a week and a half.
And our daughters are all over. One's in Wisconsin, one's in Danville, and my daughter was coming back from Europe and was having a hell of a time getting home, had to sleep over in Montreal. She and her travel partner were both sick. One was throwing up in the hotel room.
But
so it was
the
tough.
only time I could get tickets was in 2 days from this moment. I guess at that point, 3 days. It was a Monday.
Yeah.
I got tickets for Thursday night. So John supports my crazy idea because this was not going to be cheap and it was going to mean all 5 of us had to drop everything.
Yeah, and fly to Las Vegas.
And make their way to Las Vegas. So I find tickets, all 5 of us, and I send out a group text, and it's all about love is what I'm talking about in this text. And for my daughter in Wisconsin, I call her and I'm like, whatever you have to do, get yourself to Vegas by Thursday morning. We have to be at a show Thursday night. She's like, but Mom, I've got to work. I can't take, I'm like, Ari, it's all for love. It's all about love. We are more important. The 5 of us are more important. And they all thought I was fucking insane.
And part of it was that we were saying, you know, that they're getting to an age where they're all in college now, and we don't have that many more opportunities to do family experiences with the 5 of us.
Right. At some point, there'll be new partners mixed in.
Yeah,
and it felt
really
like
time limited.
We just got this family unit back together, and we want to
we got to do something big.
The hell out of it. So my daughter was like, Mom, I can't, I have to work. I'm like, Ari, whatever you got to do to make it happen. So she starts to figure that out. Meanwhile, the other 2, one, like John said, his daughter was on her way home from Europe.
I called Molly and I told Molly, I was like, oh, guess what? We're going to go to Vegas in 2 days. And she started crying. Like, that's the start we were off to. She's like, I can't do it. I'm too exhausted. I need time to wash my clothes. Yeah, I've got work. Like, there was a bunch of reasons why she couldn't do it.
You're 18, suck it up and deal. Like, really? Come on. Like, we're taking you to Vegas. Well, and then, you know, my youngest daughter was at home and she saw a whole slew of texts come through, one including the airline flights.
Only check the last text.
One including the show tickets. One including a picture night of John and I drinking our champagne by the water. And the final text I said, it's all for love. Well, she didn't scroll up.
No.
All she saw was the champagne and the love. And she's like, oh God, there's Mom and John, you know, whatever they're doing, it's all for love. Okay, woohoo, right? Yeah. And kind of mocking us a little bit. Well, we make it happen. But my daughter in Wisconsin has to figure out how she's going to get off of work. So she decides to tell her boss, my mom might be getting married in Vegas. So I have to go in case she decides when we're there to get married.
And so that got her off. And then she told us, well, if we're going to Vegas, you guys should get married in Vegas.
Not getting married in Vegas. That's like, we're way too spiritual in our, where we're at in our lives. Like, that's not going to be what our wedding looks like.
Just leave it at, we're not getting married in Vegas.
So the next day,
I don't want to insult Vegas.
Well, this is great. It just didn't match our needs.
Yeah, what we're looking for in a place to get married.
Yeah. Doesn't feel the most spiritual of places.
But I hate to miss an opportunity to mess with children.
So but first, my daughter, the next day, she sends us a Google Doc that she put together, lobbying for why we had to get married in Vegas. And what was amazing, and I'm someone who's totally into the woo-woo, I'm into the signs. I think signs are just like the universe's, you know, way of telling me I'm on the right path. Well, the 3 girls, one summer when we first started dating, after a year and a half, on vacation, they started planning our wedding.
So they liked us together even then.
They liked us together even then. And they created a document of what our wedding would look like and the dresses and the whole shebang. Well, my daughter found that original document, and the date was June 27th, 2017. That's when they created it. And we were arriving in Vegas on June 27th, 2024.
Wait, wasn't it the same day? You said 17th and 27th.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was June 7th, 27th.
On both.
But one was 2017, one was 2024. Yeah. So we were arriving on the same date. And Ari was like, Mom, it's a sign. Like, you got to do this. It's a sign. She went through and put all these photos of us beautiful. Over the past 8.5 years. And then, of course, there was this one part, the little dig of, after all you guys have put us through from our breakup, the least you could do for us
is get married.
Get married. We're like, we're not getting married. However, I called John the next morning and said, I looked into the Little Vegas wedding chapel and we could do a non-legally binding ceremony with Elvis.
Like a commitment ceremony, family commitment ceremony. And I was like, great. That's great.
So we book it and we didn't tell the kids yet.
Mm-hmm. They wouldn't have believed us anyway.
So we get to Vegas and we go see Love, and it was
an epic night.
Epic on a variety of levels.
A lot of laughter.
Very family bonding. That was the whole Katy Perry moment. John said it a moment ago. There was a bag flying in the middle of the street and it was like the fireworks song. So we then tell the girls, okay, tomorrow we have an appointment at 4:30 with Elvis.
Dress up.
So by 2:00, we got to go back to our rooms. We're at the pool and we got to go get ready for our wedding.
So we get to the taxi stand and it's 108 degrees out. It is hot.
It's hot.
And we tell the taxi cab driver we're going to the Little Chapel of Vegas. And the girls were like, what?
They thought we were just fucking with them.
Which we do frequently. But then we get in the cab and we get to the chapel and we start filling out the paperwork, which is kind of like, a Mad Libs of wedding vows in a way. What religion are you? Is this legally binding? Right. Different stuff. And then my daughter was like, wait, like she was super confused, which was great.
It was awesome.
I like it when she's really confused.
And then we feel
like I'm doing a good job as dad.
Had to be a boutonniere for you, which I couldn't put on. And we're taking all these photos and they're still totally confused. And now it's time to go in
and we were late. So our ceremony was truncated a little bit, 10 or 15 minutes.
The abridged version. But we did get to choose the songs that Elvis serenaded us with.
Yes. And so walking in, when Joree was walking in, we had Can't Help Falling in Love with You, which is a great romantic Elvis song. But then on the way out, we had an even better song, which is a little less action, a little more conversation, a little less action.
Oh, it was perfect. So we're about to go in and the girls are still looking super confused, which ironically and hilariously, we were all wearing black. Mm-hmm. That's just what we all happened to be dressed in. And before we walked in, I turned to everyone. I said, okay, you guys, here's the deal. This is a non-legally binding ceremony. However, when it comes time for the vows, this is a family commitment. So all 5 of us are going to hold hands and say what we are committing to this family unit. And it was the most joyous filled 10 minutes, I think, of my life. My girls walked me down. John's daughter stood as his quote best man. The ceremony was actually incredibly touching. Mm-hmm. And then came time for the vows, where we stood in a circle,
held hands,
and everyone shared what they were committed to. And it was beautiful. And I remember one of the things, I think it was my daughter, Cammie, who said, that she was really hoping and honoring you would have a lifetime of laughter and memories together. And one of them was about how I'm going to be a sister to you guys. I mean, really beautiful vows around how we as the parents were there to protect and to guide. And then we all danced.
Yeah. To little more conversation, a little less conversation, a little more action. Yeah.
But it was, I hope that you guys go look on our social media at our Instagram, Love Isn't Enough 33, because I'll post these wedding photos, which I haven't yet shared publicly.
They're fantastic.
The joy that is exuded in these photos, I don't know how it's going to be recreated when we actually get married. Honestly,
I don't know that anything like it at any sort of wedding, with just the happiness and joy.
And to think that just within, less than a year and a half earlier, it felt so broken and it felt hopeless. And ironically, I had gone back and looked at my journals when we got back together. And I had written, like, I always in my heart knew we'd be back together, but I didn't see the path, because I thought we had tried everything at that point. And it was like, okay, but love isn't enough. What do we do? right? And the year and a half that followed is what you do when love isn't enough. And it was now accumulated in this amazing 48 hours in Vegas, which after our wedding ceremony or our non-wedding ceremony, we went out and celebrated. And we had an amazing dinner that night in which each girl of ours was really like amazed of how'd you guys do this? Mm-hmm. Not only how did you heal your relationship to the point that you are so in love and it was so obvious to them, but how did we blend families in a way where everyone felt seen and heard and validated?
They say they love each other easily and frequently, and they call each other sisters.
They do. And
yeah, they see us as parent.
Yeah. I mean, your daughter we just brought to college says, these are my parents.
I'm not sure how to say that without putting anyone else down. So I'm just trying to be respectful there.
Of course, they view us as a joint unit in which they have seen healing at every level. Yeah. I can't think of any better gift to give young adults than to see the real work it takes to be in healthy relationships.
And to show them that love is possible for them.
That it's possible, and that it's so much more than the butterflies and romance you have in the first few weeks or months of a relationship. That's not love, that's limerence. Yeah.
And they're different.
And
limerence fades.
And it's supposed to fade. It's not supposed to last.
Yeah, it's unsustainable. It's too intense a positive emotion. Limerence is like the lust and obsessiveness and
rose-colored lenses.
That really intense feeling that we get when we first are going out with somebody and all we can think about is them.
Yeah. There's a healthy part of, wanting to help maintain positive emotion and intention and connection.
But I think just to know that generally fades and calms down and that's normal is a good piece of information.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. So we hope that our story is inspiring and that we have been through, aside from our marriages to our high school sweethearts, that we were both married and divorced from our high school sweetheart, have had an incredibly different experience in divorce, often a very different experience in raising kids, and yet this beautiful yet often really difficult relationship of our own to then have come through this other side, despite what we always knew intellectually from our education or what we were trained in to work with our clients. But from the inside out, the real nitty gritty of actually how to get unstuck. Mm-hmm. And then what does it look like to maintain it? And, our hopes in this podcast is that we continue to share all the tools that we continue to practice, all the tools that we teach our clients, inspiring conversation with other relationship experts and other couples who are in our minds really upholding what we see as these top values where love isn't enough. And yet they're having thriving, connecting, satisfying, fulfilling partnership.
Because we want you to have that too. That's the ultimate goal.
Everyone deserves this. Mm-hmm. It's not easy to get there. You do need two willing participants to do the work.
Yeah, you can't pull one along by his short hairs.
No.
Notice how I said his.
That's generally the way it goes. When we eventually with our couples therapist did a trip to Africa, and we were the youngest people on that trip. Well, I was definitely the youngest since I'm 10 years younger than John. But
Asshole.
I would say John was the youngest person by 20 years.
Yeah.
And then I was, 10 years behind him. But there was a couple in their second marriage, mid-70s. And I remember asking them one night at dinner, what has made your relationship work this second time around? Mm. And they had said that they had made a commitment. It was actually in their wedding vows that they were always going to be willing to be willing. And I love that, to have the hard conversation.
Yeah, to work on things, to look at yourself.
To grow, to whatever that meant. So this is our invitation to you. If you are feeling that your love isn't enough to feel fulfilled, satisfied, sexually satisfied, we'll have a lot of fun talking about sex on the podcast too, because
it's a big part of a good relationship.
Well, and it's so much more than just sex of how to get there, right? It's emotional safety, it's vulnerability, it's connection on every which level. I don't know anyone, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know anyone who's ever said, I really want an unfulfilling relationship. Have you?
No, never.
I don't think anyone wants that. They might settle for it thinking it's not possible.
Settled for often.
But we're here to tell you and guide you and show you how to get that fulfilling relationship that you want, you deserve. It's possible. It's not always easy, but it definitely is possible. So any final thoughts of?
No, I think that was a good round of story sharing. And we wanted to start off with the end in mind and just telling you with where we're at now and a lot of the good things that we're experiencing now and a little bit of the struggles that we went through to get there in order to inspire you, to show you that it's possible, and ultimately to motivate you to work on yourself and your relationship.
And I think one of the strengths that we bring to our work is our vulnerability in telling it like it is. You know, I feel that it's really easy to share solid relationship tools. And we know that there's a lot of research back relationship tools that we teach our clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can read them in a lot of books.
And we'll still talk about those tools.
Sure.
But my hope is that this podcast is a platform for our own vulnerability as a couple in a thriving relationship, to give the nitty gritty of what it actually takes to get there when you can't access those tools. Because the tools are great. Being able to access them, implement them, maintain them, continue to give positive feedback about them. And I don't like to say it's work, because work has a negative connotation. It's attention. It's intention. It's what else? Time. It's
also love.
It's love.
It's passion, right? Yeah. And the motivation is a big part of it, I would argue, because I think doing the work is sometimes scary. And especially for men, right? It forces us to go up against things that we don't know and we can't change sometimes. And that's not what we like to deal with.
Yeah.
And so I think it does take a heavy dose of courage and curiosity, open-mindedness, and non-judgmentalness, among other things.
Among other things. So it's our hope that this inspired you to hear a little bit of our story and to continue to tune in to hear more of not just our story, but ways that you can begin to practice these tools, and hopefully some new and novel ways, not just the standard.
Yeah. And we'll be coming out with new episodes every Tuesday morning.
And have inspiring couples that we really feel are representative of what Love Isn't Enough looks like. And, you know, if this is inspiring to you, we really want to hear from you. You know, give us feedback on social media. Love Isn't Enough 33 is our Instagram. And there is a lot of opportunity to continue to share. So we're really excited for this episode to be finally released out into the world.
Yeah, send us your relationship questions also.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun to be able to do some real solid.
So that would be,
Q&A.
You can send those to Joree at loveisn'tenough.net.
That'd be great. Thank you so much, Love, for your love and for your willingness to grow and give me the relationship I've dreamt of.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's been beyond anything I thought it could be.
And it continues to grow. So, well, thanks so much, you guys, for tuning in.